Today we have an important message from the Timekeepers about what will happen to humanity, how it will affect many people, and which people especially need to be attentive. And Natalia, a channeler, hypnotherapist, and warrior of light, will tell us all about this now. Hello, Natalia. The first question that immediately comes to mind is, what is happening to the field? Now we have a specific date, 2026, coming up. What needs to be accomplished before that time? What is supposed to happen? I'd like to get up to speed on the events, starting with some general points.
Yes, early this morning, I received important information through channeling. Lately, I often wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning because a powerful stream of information is coming through, and it needs to be shared immediately. Powerful changes are underway. I think many people are noticing this. There are increasingly powerful solar flares in April. This will happen almost every day. It will intensify. The Earth's frequency is changing. This is happening faster and faster because humanity is already in the process of a global transformation, which will intensify many times over with each passing day. Time is accelerating. Many of you notice that sometimes it rushes by very quickly, and other times it seems to slow down. Sometimes it feels like we fall out of time and lose entire days. Unexplainable events are happening. And during these events, many people will simply disappear. And it's not about them actually dying. It's about a more complex process when a person simply stops fitting into the new energetic matrix and begins to fall out. There will be a very strong division. It has already begun, but it will intensify. And some people will become almost invisible. They will become more and more faded. People will stop noticing them. Their energy will fade away. And this has already started.
What? I don't know. What shouldn't we do so that our energy doesn't leave us? Who does this affect first and foremost? How does this affect our physiology in general?
Energy manifests itself first and foremost, of course, on the energetic level. And in order to prevent this from happening, we shouldn't resist this transition. We need to accept this energy, and we also shouldn't deny that this transition is happening. Now I'll talk about several types of people who will be the first to disappear, those who will be affected first and foremost. The first group is aggressive skeptics. These are the people who deny everything that goes beyond their materialistic worldview, who devalue everything that channelers say, everything that guides say. And they react aggressively to any information about spiritual development, higher powers, or energetic changes. Such people often leave aggressive comments under videos. And of course, this aggression will work against them. They will be the first to disappear. Secondly, there are the materialist consumers, those people who are fixated on the material. And we're not talking about wealthy people who consume a lot. Often people are not wealthy and believe they are not materialist consumers, yet they are still very much fixated on money. They are constantly judging people who have money or who sell something. And this aggression within them will also have a very negative effect on them. Because during the transition, we must realize that the world is not only material, that there is a spiritual side, there is energy, and this will become more and more obvious with each passing day. We need to open ourselves to the fact that the world is multidimensional because it will become increasingly difficult to deny this. The next group is energy vampires. There are people who naturally have a low level of energy, and they have adapted to consume the energy of others. They often use manipulation, provoke people into emotional reactions through aggression or pity, and feed off other people's energy. These people will also suffer during the transition because it will become increasingly difficult for them to do this. In other words, it will become obvious as awareness and sensitivity will grow, and they will no longer be able to hide what they are doing. It will be clear, and no one will feed them anymore. The next type of people is a group I call the deniers of change. All those who deny that anything is happening, all those who are afraid of the new, all those who want to live in the past, clinging to old models that no longer work. These are people who always say that things were better before, or deny that anything has changed, saying that it's always been this way, nothing new. And these are very anxious people who, because of the accelerating changes, are feeling this anxiety more and more. I think they've already started to notice strange anomalies. And this sign of being out of sync with the new energies of the earth is becoming increasingly obvious to them. And the last group I want to highlight are those who are fixated on judgment. These are people who judge others and spend a lot of energy criticizing and pointing out other people's flaws. They don't create anything themselves. Mostly they just consume, criticize, and judge. So generally speaking, these are the people who are most at risk. And what I want to say is that I haven't tried to scare anyone. Every person at any moment in their life can reconsider their views, what they do, and can consciously change their life and adapt to the quantum transition in a new way.
Can I clarify something important here for a moment? Let's say, for example, I am an energy vampire, or perhaps someone else is, and at first the energy doesn't seem to come, then various illnesses gradually start to appear. Or is there some kind of clear gradation? How exactly can you tell at what specific phase you are, how deeply immersed you are in the negative aspects? I'm not entirely sure if my question is completely clear.
The question is clear. We can do a basic energy diagnosis right now and measure your energy level. If you have no energy from the very morning, if you wake up already feeling exhausted, and throughout the day you don't have enough energy even for the simplest tasks, except maybe sitting and scrolling through some news, reels, or videos on your phone, then this already indicates that your energy is low. If you constantly feel the urge to criticize, create conflicts, and try to get energy through that, then your energy is very low. If your state is constantly somewhere between depression and anxiety, then your energy is critically low. If you don't have the energy to create something of your own, to be creative, to express yourself, or to work on your own projects, then your energy is also low. In other words, from the first sign to the last, that's the scale. I want to share some good news. Energy is infinite. Everything around us is energy, and you can learn to work with it consciously. There is a tremendous amount of energy in the earth, and even those solar flares, which make many people feel unwell, are also a huge source of energy that you can learn to work with. For example, when these solar flares occur, I personally receive this energy, and instead of feeling bad, I actually feel good. I get more energy. I can literally feel it coming down from above, and I accept it. I use it in my practices. I use it for my followers, for my students. I conduct healing energy practices, and every person can learn to interact with energy. Energy is all around us. There is a lot of energy in nature, in the earth, the sun, the planets. In other words, our entire world on a subtle level is made up of this energy. And if you don't deny it, if you accept it and learn how to work with it, you can actually feel really good.
Could you go into a bit more detail here? What should you do so that you don't feel bad when a solar flare happens? Is it that a person blocks the energy and resists it, and that's why they're not ready for it? Or is there a way someone can help themselves individually?
It's not just about resisting. There are several factors involved. For example, a lot of people now complain that during solar flares, especially, they experience headaches and migraines. And besides headaches, they also feel strange pains in other parts of the body that aren't physiological. There are no medical reasons for them. People go through diagnostics, see doctors, but the doctors don't find anything. By the way, it's notable that often even painkillers don't help with these pains. I've heard this from many people. What is this? This is one of my favorite topics. These are the so-called blocks. So blocks are clusters of negative emotions that exist in the subtle body. These could be old emotions, maybe even from past lives that you could say got stuck in the subtle body. A person gets used to them, so they think everything is fine. They live their whole life like this, and it almost goes unnoticed, even though these blocks are there. And a person with extrasensory perception, for example, I can sense such blocks. I see them, I feel them in my own body. If I tune into a person, if I scan them, I can also say exactly what blocks are present. And now, as these energies descend, as the Earth's vibration changes, these blocks begin to manifest, and they show up, among other things, as physical pain. And most people think that this is bad. For example, if you have a headache, it's considered bad, but in reality, it's not a bad thing. These blocks are simply starting to show themselves, and they can be removed. There are great tools for this. I have them at least, and this is something I do. It's one of my strong suits. I work on unblocking. These blocks exist on the energy level, and they are also removed through energetic influence. And when these blocks are removed, I do this regularly at my International Academy for Super Abilities. I have an event called Unblocking, where I work with a group using my tools and remove a large number of blocks. And what happens when the blocks are removed? Headaches go away, back pain disappears, lower back pain stops. There can be blocks in the lower back, in the knees, in any part of the body. And a certain area of a person's life becomes unblocked. Often a super ability is unlocked. Clairvoyance, claircognizance, or clairsentience may open up. And life changes as well. For example, if the blocks were in the throat, a person begins to express themselves creatively. If the blocks were in the lower back, the flow of money becomes unblocked. And this is actually quite powerful and happens very quickly. So, for those of you who are feeling unwell these days during this period, it's kind of a signal, a wake-up call that you need to work on your blocks. There are, not just me, there are other tools as well, but you definitely need to work with energy practices, using energy to remove them.
I also want to remind everyone that Natalia has a Telegram channel where you can find separate broadcasts on each of the types we mentioned, which address blockages at different levels. There are many broadcasts on various more specific and specialized topics in the Telegram channel, and you can also find announcements for other broadcasts there. Natalia also has another channel, a separate one on YouTube, where there is also a huge amount of information available to everyone. And today, Natalia has prepared a little gift for you. We'll talk about it a bit later, but if you're especially interested, you can already check the links below this video. And actually, the next question is why the number 26? We're already getting to that number, meaning that's the point of no return. You can't go any further. You won't be allowed past 27. It's already so close.
Yes, that's right. This information is now coming to many guides, and I often get comments asking why all of you are talking about this. Friends, there is a reason why we're all talking about this. When information is very important, it is delivered to many guides. That is all people who have the ability to channel, who can receive information from subtle planes. Absolutely all of them receive the same information. And for me personally, just logically, as someone who values logic, this is evidence that this information is true. This process is underway, and it started some time ago, and it's gaining momentum. We see that the number of solar flares is only increasing, their intensity is growing, unusual phenomena are occurring on the planet, and there are solar and northern lights appearing in places where they never used to be. And there are other things that can no longer be ignored, things that are now visible to the naked eye. And in 2020, we see that this intensity is increasing, and it will continue to grow. That is, it's only April now, the 4th month, and in the summer it will be, you could say, the peak of this transition, and it will intensify further. Therefore, it is inevitable that this year the transition will take place, and this division will no longer be possible to ignore. Many people notice that social processes are changing and relationships between people are changing. And what used to work in the old energies no longer works now. The mistakes that used to go unpunished and didn't have such serious consequences will now become more and more significant. In other words, all processes will intensify and everything hidden will become revealed. As someone who works directly with people and with super abilities, I see this clearly. In my project, what I do is gather people who have the potential to develop clairvoyance, clairsentience, claircognizance, and to learn channeling. I bring such people together and help them unlock their abilities, teaching them how to use these abilities. And for now, this is still considered something unusual. However, I see how many people there are now who write about having these abilities. I've been involved in this field for more than a year, and I can say that last year there were far fewer such people. And even in my own practices, which I conduct, I can see this. I've been running these practices quite broadly in the online space for about 5 years. And before, only a few people during the practice could feel something. Recently, I conducted a survey. I had 100 people in a Zoom practice session, and exactly half of them, not only did they feel something, but they also clearly saw what I was doing. They saw my energy vortex, they saw the vortex of different colors that I was creating, they saw the runes I was using. Even though all of this was happening on a subtle level, you could say it was all in my imagination. And people picked up on it easily, 50%. That's a lot. And this year, we'll see that many people will start to develop abilities en masse. With this group of people, we will be transitioning to multidimensional perception. At the same time, there's a second group of people, all those I mentioned, everyone who denies or fears these changes. Their negative emotions, fear, aggression, rejection, judgment, will only intensify. And these emotions will destroy them, both energetically and in terms of their health. These people will start to fall out of life, out of the general flow.
Now, I think it's time to mention that Natalia's gift is a channeling marathon. We had a question in the chat, I see, about why Natalia is able to see and receive information. In this marathon, Natalia explains absolutely free of charge. It's a gift marathon, how to actually do this. And I'd like to clarify a bit more about the event happening in the world. So first, things need to reach a boiling point, then pass through, and even when everything seems fine, in 2025, we should still expect some unexpected twists and turns.
But we see that these unexpected turns are increasing, including in politics, one of the strongest players, the USA, for example. They surprise us literally every day. And I don't see this subsiding in any way. It's only going to intensify, just like the quantum transition. And I see that the point of this is to push the situation to such an extreme, to complete absurdity, to total conflict, so that all the old things simply collapse. In other words, what we are seeing is the destruction of systems that have been established for years. If for about 100 years there was this certain standoff, the Soviet Union versus the USA, the collective West together with Europe, now even the entire West is shifting its poles. And the whole world is shifting its poles. That is, this will happen on the physical level as well. The Earth's poles will shift and move. And this will also happen in public life and in politics. And when all of this is redistributed, everything will be arranged in a completely different way, one that, let's say, we can't come up with just by thinking about it. In other words, only those who can read the probabilities of the future can somehow sense it, what it will be like, that it will be a new world based on new principles.
And now, people, all of whom have these abilities, that is, as it is supposedly intended from above, when a person's soul is open, when a person is open to new energies, they begin to hear the space, to sense what is possible, what is not worth doing, how it affects the matrix of events. It is as if this should intuitively guide the person on its own. And everyone else, those who don't feel this way, end up being blocked, and those who are anxious.
I have some interesting information, scientific by the way. There is an interesting organization in the US called IONS, IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences. They have been around for almost 100 years now. And this organization tries to study paranormal phenomena, superhuman abilities, healing abilities, and channeling, among other things, using scientific methods. And they have already made a lot of interesting observations. And one of their observations really interested me. What they did was they conducted an experiment where they took a group of channelers, that is, people who clearly demonstrated superhuman abilities. And they took a second group of people of about the same age and with a similar ratio of men and women, but who had no abilities at all. So they tried to understand what the differences were between the two groups. Well, the first difference, which they easily identified, was that the people who were channelers also had other family members with abilities. For example, some had parents who were also mediums or grandmothers and so on. And among the people without abilities, there was no one in their families with such abilities either. And this led them to think that perhaps the reason lies in genetics. So they began to study the differences at the DNA level, and they found this difference. They discovered that there is a part of the DNA that is active in channelers, but blocked in people without abilities. But the most surprising thing about this research is that they determined that in channelers with super abilities, this type of DNA is original or wild. And in people without abilities, their gene is mutated. Thus, they suggested that originally all people were created or intended for multidimensional perception. But then, most likely, when the persecution of psychics and magicians began, when the witch hunt started, some people, perhaps through their intentions or in some other way, blocked these abilities at the genetic level. And now, this is still a hypothesis. It hasn't been proven yet. The hypothesis is that now is the time to unlock this. And the time has come for people with abilities. But this is something I truly believe in myself and something I see. I see that in the new world, everything will be based on multidimensional perception, and people with abilities will gain more social and economic opportunities, and everything will be built around this. And people without abilities will either develop them or they will become marginalized, meaning they will be excluded from society.
Am I right in understanding that now the connection with higher powers has become even stronger? So, for example, if a person sets a clear intention or genuinely prays or actively interacts in any meaningful way, this particular channel has now become significantly stronger, right?
The channels have definitely become stronger, and I also see that the boundary between worlds is fading. That is, we have the subtle world, so to speak, its inhabitants, and we have the physical world. And in the past, these worlds had, let's say, a solid partition between them. And you needed to have very strong abilities to break through it and, as they say, go into the astral. It used to be quite a big deal. And if you look at the history of the development of abilities, of magic, people used to study for years in secret societies. For example, the Druids, whom I love, also study and teach. Druids would undergo about 30 years of training to become a master. But now, since everything has accelerated and the boundary is fading, it has become much easier. It's very easy to learn, very easy to unlock abilities. And not just the Druids, for example. That was a long time ago. Take my project, for instance. For example, a year ago in February, I did an unblocking session and it was quite difficult. It took me 2 full days. I worked with a group for about 2 days, roughly 7 hours each day. Iras Vladimirovich cinema. Well, I do them periodically. Already in the summer, I managed to do it in just 5 hours and the result was better. That is, more abilities were unlocked in the group at a higher percentage. In the fall, I did it in 4 hours, and the last time, the time was reduced to 3 hours. So it gets easier each time. And I think it's not just about me here. I mean, of course, I'm developing as a master, but not that rapidly. I truly believe that these energies genuinely help me with what I do in the process of unlocking.
I still have this question and a bit of fear as well. So it turns out that everything gradually gets worse if you don't listen to yourself. Like anxiety, physical issues, health. So it's not like some punishment comes and say, I'm not ready for new energies. And then something physical happens to me. I don't know, some event takes me away. In other words, it's not like a meteorite will fall and take people away or anything like that. Everything happens gradually. Everyone has time.
No, I don't see it happening that way. What actually happens is roughly the following. For example, imagine there were fish. These fish lived in the water and then they were thrown onto land. And the fish either adapt to living on land or they don't adapt and can't survive on land and then they die. So this is a natural process. Right now, there is a rapid change in the environment. And when there is a rapid change in the environment, people have to adapt. If they don't adapt, they won't be able to survive. Such processes have happened before. For example, there were some cataclysms or other events and the environment changed dramatically. But in those cases, it was about, for example, a sudden change in climate. But now it's not so much about climate change as it is about changes at the energy level. And because this isn't really visible, it's not as obvious as, say, everywhere suddenly becoming cold or, on the contrary, everywhere turning into the tropics. These changes aren't as obvious, they're more subtle, but that doesn't mean they're any less significant. They might even be more significant. And it's not about someone punishing someone else. The point is that even now, for people who don't have certain abilities, it is becoming very difficult to understand what's going on. If you look at it logically, it's as if everyone has gone crazy, as if the whole world has gone mad. If you have this feeling, it means you don't understand the depth of this process, because on the surface, yes, it does look very crazy. And if you don't learn, so to speak, to look deeper, to see what lies behind these processes, this feeling will only grow stronger. And this anxiety, aggression, and fear, they will intensify. And negative emotions are what affect your health. Everyone knows that illnesses come from nerves. It's a common saying, and it's true. Illnesses definitely arise from nerves, from negative emotions.
And if I'm sure there are many people like me. For example, I'm very troubled by what's happening right now in Georgia, in Ukraine, in Russia, in Uzbekistan, in Israel. I don't know, should I just sit down and say, well, that's how it has to be. That's just the way it is. It's a lesson, and not get involved. So is that the right way to behave, or what?
Of course, you shouldn't get emotionally involved. And I see, for example, with my students, that those who get less involved go through all of this more easily. We have people from many different countries studying at our academy. We have students from Russia, Ukraine, and America. And I see that at least among people with certain abilities within our groups, there are no conflicts. No matter what happens in politics, no matter what anyone says, at our level, we have our own world, and people communicate in a completely different way because this interaction is on another level. By the way, I truly believe that when this significant transition actually happens and when, the moment arrives, excuse me for a moment, please. It seems like dark forces are influencing me live on air. But it's okay, we'll manage.
Perhaps it is simply that someone is not quite ready to truly hear this particular message just yet. And that is precisely why they are patiently waiting.
I'm going to finish my thought anyway. When at least 50% of the population unlock their abilities, even by 50%, I believe that's when conflicts will start to subside. Because just imagine what will happen when every person can feel what another person feels. If you can feel another person's pain, like I have, by the way, since childhood, it becomes very hard for you to hurt anyone. For example, I'm not a confrontational person, and it's hard for me to say unpleasant things to someone for the simple reason that as soon as I do, the person will feel bad inside, feel pain or some kind of hurt, and I will immediately pick up on that and feel it too. If we could see where our choices would lead when you choose to do something, for example, if you could actually see what would happen, what the consequences would be. Because people often say hurtful things and make harmful choices in the heat of the moment without considering the scale of the consequences, including for themselves. And this will lead to such a sharp rise in the level of awareness among the Earth's population that many conflicts will become impossible. It will be impossible to manipulate people, impossible to instill aggressive ideas in them because people will sense that it's a lie or that it's manipulation. And then everything will change. I believe in that.
Well, right now, it really does feel like this energy is already starting to come into play. Friends, you can also write in, or maybe it's just me who feels this way. Well, it wasn't like this before. Now, when you turn on the news, it doesn't matter which country or what events they're talking about. You just see how, well, it's impossible. How is that possible? How is that? Who is this even made for? It's like they're trying to fool a child. This kind of thing comes up from time to time whenever you come across screens. By the way, speaking of abilities, am I right in understanding that basically as soon as we start to feel this energy, as soon as we begin to have intuition and the dimensionality of this new space, it's considered that a person who has transitioned has also had their abilities activated at the same time. And in fact, that's what evolution was trying to achieve in this cycle of transition.
Let me now tell you about the signs that indicate you have the potential to unlock super abilities, that you have the potential to successfully go through this quantum transition. Perhaps you already have these signs, but many people tend to dismiss them out of habit.
Very interesting. Yes.
Yet, the first sign is empathy. All empaths are people with the potential to unlock clairsentience. Such people often say, I can feel other people's energy. These people often feel uncomfortable in crowds because they pick up on a lot of other people's emotions and feel the pain of others. Or their mood might change. For example, they might look at another person who is in a bad mood, pick up on that, and perceive it as their own. Empaths often complain about their abilities because they don't know how to control them. And it seems to them that they take on other people's illnesses because they can feel when someone else has a headache. In reality, if you are an empath, if you are clairsentient, don't worry. You are not taking on other people's illnesses. You are simply sensing them, and you can learn to control this ability. The second sign is prophetic and precognitive dreams, vivid dreams, dreams in which the deceased appear and convey some kind of message. Such people say, for example, that they see upcoming events in their dreams or see events involving other people. And then these people appear in my life. For many, by the way, this happens after some kind of crisis, after they've been in an accident or after a loved one has passed away. In general, strong stress, including divorce. For many, these abilities become activated. The third sign is a love of nature. That is, many people with such abilities love solitude, enjoy being in nature, and draw energy from it. It's an unconscious, intuitive understanding that there is energy in nature. The fourth sign, children and animals are often drawn to such people. This, as a rule, indicates a person's healing energy because animals and children can sense it and are intuitively drawn to people with strong healing energy. Intuition, premonition. Such people say, I feel like something is about to happen. Or, for example, someone calls and even before looking at the phone, the person already knows who it is. And then they look and see that, yes, indeed, it was that person who called. Or they think about someone and inside they feel a tremor, a sense of anxiety. That means something is going to happen to that person. This also happens. The next sign is goosebumps. Many people say that when they hear some information that resonates with them, they get goosebumps. So goosebumps are also a kind of sign through the body. This is also clairsentience. That is, through your body, you feel that this information is useful or true for you. Problems with electrical appliances. People with strong energy, with great potential, often have devices break down, light bulbs burn out, the internet or connection gets cut off, and so on. Clocks stop working. The next sign is seeing repeating numbers on clocks. This has been happening a lot lately. Many people write to me about it on Telegram. By the way, I actually did a whole marathon on Telegram about this. You can find it there. What do repeating numbers on clocks mean? And spontaneous out-of-body experiences. That is, there are people who spontaneously notice that they see their body from the outside. Clairaudience. For example, your thoughts often appear in your head as if another voice is speaking directly to you, or as if someone is actively prompting you, perhaps saying something like, yes, do this or don't do that. Telepathy. For example, you might be thinking intently about someone and then almost immediately they call you right after. That's a clear sign of telepathy, but I can name a few more signs. For example, sensitivity to the energy of places. I've had this ability since birth. These are people who can sense the atmosphere of a space. They walk in somewhere and can tell if the energy is good or bad. There are people who are sensitive to smells and sometimes sense odors that aren't physically present. For example, they might sense the scent of their grandmother's perfume or a certain plant, even though it's not physically there. This is called clairvoyance. Sensitive people often recognize lies and can tell when someone is being dishonest. And when they see someone lying, they feel embarrassed for them. This ability to read people can also be considered a form of telepathy. In fact, it's actually quite easy to read other people's thoughts. There are people who are visited by deceased relatives in their dreams. These are, of course, natural-born mediums or channelers. Many people see entities in the dark, for example, or out of the corner of their eye. These are potential clairvoyants. And a lot of people now are saying that thoughts are materializing. As soon as you think about something, it already starts to happen. This is also happening a lot. By the way, dear viewers, let us know in the comments if you notice any of the things I mentioned in yourselves. This is actually very important.
I have a comment as well. Friends, please write to us. I also want to remind you about the marathon, where it's already explained in detail what to do about this and how to handle it. So I have a question. Well, it exists and it can have a negative impact on a person. For example, I have empathy, and sometimes it manifests in a way that's actually bad, in the sense that I can see when someone is trying to do something wrong or deceive me. But my empathy is so developed that I even feel awkward telling them that I've caught them lying. I understand why they're doing it. They're going through something themselves and all that. And even in a conflict situation, it's like you end up taking the side of the person who's actually against you. And sometimes you can feel it with places too. Sometimes you come to a place and it just feels so bad to be there that you want to run away. But someone else comes in and, well, nothing seems wrong to them. Is it possible to learn how to manage this, to do it, to develop it, to strengthen it? So what should you do with it? I'm sure that most of our viewers have these traits activated as well.
I've been a clear feeler since childhood, sensing places, feeling people, reading people. That's my innate ability. And when I was younger, I also didn't understand what to do with it. For example, it was only as an adult that I realized why I don't really like going to church, or rather just being inside the church itself. Especially if it's an old one. I like visiting, I'm interested in such places. But if there's a service going on and a lot of people are praying, it's hard for me because I pick up on all of that. It's not just thoughts, they're like thought forms already. They're praying, they're all asking for something. And for me, it's like a constant hum. It's hard to endure. Well, first of all, there are, let's say, both pros and cons to this. So, of course, when you see that someone is lying, at least you don't fall for their, let's say, lies, and you understand what's going on. And as for feeling embarrassed for them, I've experienced that too. But here, working on boundaries helps. I have some exercises for that, which I share on my social media to help people sense their own boundaries. In other words, where I end and where I don't. It's very useful to practice this, knowing what's mine and what's not, and to distinguish, because the problem with empaths is that they don't differentiate between what's theirs and what's not, and they get confused. You need to learn not to mix these up, and you need to learn to manage it. Now I'm picking up on something and now I'm stopping. And there are techniques. For example, if I'm going to a large public place, I set boundaries for myself, deciding that I don't want to feel or pick up on anything. But on the other hand, it can be really great to use this at work. For example, I use it as a tool. If I'm working with a person or a group of people, I connect with them, I feel them, I work with them. So this sensitivity allows me to go in, to feel these blocks, to sense how they are released. And then when I finish the work, I remove all of that from myself. I stop feeling it. And about places, well, that's useful too. There really are places where you shouldn't be. And when you feel that a place is bad, you simply don't stay there. On the other hand, there are a lot of good places, and one of my hobbies is that I love to look for such places and visit them. There are very powerful places, places of power on earth, and being there is very pleasant for someone as sensitive as me. I've made a lot of trips like that on purpose. I would go to such places, spend time there, meditate. That's my favorite kind of rest.
And now we've come to a very interesting part. I know that you have also prepared a surprise practice for us today. I'll ask you to start it a bit later. Right now, another question: how do we block ourselves? What should we stop doing in order to stop shutting these abilities inside ourselves?
There's a very simple practical tip on what to do so as not to block them. Well, aside from working with energy and doing practices, of course. So the first thing is to stop devaluing them. For example, you get some kind of intuitive answer. And usually people say, oh, I probably just imagined it, or I'm probably making it up, or I'm probably just overthinking it, or whatever else. And then they go and do things the usual way, or by the book, or the way someone else tells them to. And as a rule, they end up regretting it. So you need to start developing the habit of always listening to yourself, your inner voice, your intuition. If you look at all the successful people in the world, they possess this ability. They might not call it channeling or some kind of superpower. They might say it's just their intuition, or as it's called in English, a gut feeling. But they don't ignore these hints, they pay attention to them. And when you consciously choose to do exactly that and reinforce it with action, this ability will grow stronger, even if you don't have any vivid clairvoyant images. If your intuition simply tells you that you need to do something a certain way, then you just need to go ahead and do it, even if everyone says it's illogical or abnormal. For example, you might have made an agreement with someone, but you feel that you shouldn't go through with it. Usually people think, well, I made a promise, it wouldn't be right to break it, I have to be a good person. But if you feel you should act differently, you need to follow that feeling. The more you make these kinds of choices, the more guidance you'll receive. This is a very practical method that I personally use all the time, every day.
And now, at this time, how quickly can this manifest? And just how strongly can it show up? What might these abilities look like? For example, in my case, if I develop empathy even further, or if someone sees signs, receives hints, or can communicate with deceased relatives. So what could point B look like? How powerful is this tool, really?
Point B could be that you can actually use this in your life. For example, if you are clairsentient, you could read people like an open book without making mistakes. Speaking about the positive side of this ability, it allows you to feel what another person is feeling, and this greatly improves relationships. Many of my students note that after my training, when they unlocked their abilities, almost all of them write that their relationships with loved ones improved. Because when people can't feel what others feel, they don't fully understand the other person. And this ability to feel gives a very deep understanding and improves relationships. You can receive not just some vague intuitive hints, but an entire stream of information, detailed answers. For example, through channeling, I now transmit not only information and energy, but also tools. These are the tools that I use in my programs. What I teach, the practices I conduct, no one taught me these practices. In other words, I receive them through channeling. I transmit entire tools, many of which don't even exist on Earth at this moment. From these tools, I then create some useful practice or a training course. It's quite difficult, but it's a very creative process.
We have a couple of questions about places of power, about emotions, what to do with them, where you can go, about awakening. We can answer a few of them and then move on to the practice, all right? Because these questions are genuinely interesting for everyone.
Well, I personally divide places of power into two categories, roughly speaking. Of the places I've been to, at least there are actual places of power. For me, a place of power is a spot where energy comes out of the earth in a very, very powerful stream. And in such places, it's not enough just to visit. You need to either absorb the energy or do practices, because this earth energy amplifies everything you do. If you don't do any practices, you can simply get filled with energy, but your emotions won't go anywhere. And by the way, if I'm in a bad emotional state, I wouldn't go to such a place at all, because a place of power amplifies everything. Negative emotions can also get stronger there. You should go to such places in a really good mood, without any anxieties, fears, and so on. The second type of place that I personally really love are channeling portals. That is there are places on Earth where channeling of a completely different quality is possible. Of course, I can do channeling anywhere, at home or wherever, but in such places, for me, it reaches a whole new level. It feels so real. There were moments there when it felt like complete presence on the subtle plane. There, it's possible to have a different level of communication with teachers, with spiritual guides. These are the ones I channel. And in such places, I usually receive important tools, because there you can not only get information, but an entire tool as well. On the level of energy, a teacher from the subtle plane can pass it on to you. That's it. What was the second question?
Here's another important question. What exactly does our current mood show us? Is there any significant kind of connection, perhaps?
Yes, there is. Because sometimes we don't notice what ruined our mood. For example, I've gotten used to tracking such things. If I'm sitting and suddenly my energy drops or my mood suddenly worsens, I start thinking about what happened. Either I reacted to some information without noticing it. That is, we often tell ourselves, yeah, I don't care, it doesn't bother me. But in reality, it does bother us. The second option is, if nothing like that happened, then I know for sure it's some kind of magical influence. Unfortunately, we haven't all moved into the light yet, and there are people who practice black magic, including those who do it consciously, some who do it professionally for money, and there are simply people with a lot of potential who can deliver an energetic blow just with their emotions. And then I start doing a thorough process of energy cleansing. And there's also a third option that can happen to an empath. It could be that you pick up on someone else's bad mood. That can happen too. In that case, I ask myself, is this bad mood even mine, or does it belong to someone else? If it belongs to someone else, I disconnect from it. If it's a magical influence, then I do a cleansing.
And people are asking us to name at least a couple of specific places, because I know Peru is a powerful place. There's Bali, Australia has some. And they also say that if you go to Altai, the spirits start communicating with you. I also know some specific places of power in Moscow. Actually, a guide took me there, but that's too narrow. Where can one go? Maybe name a couple of places.
I'll tell you where I've been. By the way, there are several places in Bali. First of all, Bali is basically a paradise for a channeler. I lived in Bali for a year, and at that time I was actively developing this ability, and it works really well there because the whole island is attuned to communicating with spirits. There are several places of power near Ubud. One of them is called Gunung Kawi. On the territory of Gunung Kawi, there are several spots with strong energy. There's also Sibatu with its waterfalls. The energy there is also very pleasant for cleansing. Of course, Mount Agung is a place of power. Actually, all volcanoes have strong energy. By the way, I'd really like to visit the USA. That's actually one of my plans. Yellowstone has a supervolcano, so the energy there must be incredibly powerful. Stonehenge in England is a powerful place of energy. The energy there is specifically suited for rituals. It's so intense. I was literally spun around like a whirlwind there. There's another place in England that's both a place of power and a channeling portal. That's the town of Glastonbury. There's a portal there called Glastonbury Door. It's on a hill. And at the bottom, there's a garden called the Chalice Well, the Magic Cup. That's where the place of power is located. And the second place of power there is at Glastonbury Abbey. It's a very interesting town. I've been there several times already. It's one of my favorite places. Next is Egypt. In Egypt, Mount Sinai is, of course, a channeling portal, since even Moses himself received there the most important messages, the tablets. And there are many places of power along the Nile, in the temples, in the ancient temples of Egypt, in Luxor. There are also other small portals there as well. In Luxor, there's something truly incredible. I think I'll go there again, follow up, because there's so much to see. It was hard to take it all in at once. I also found another channeling portal in Azerbaijan, Mount Beshbamak. There's a channeling portal and a place of power there as well. It has both. I haven't been to Ayers Rock in Australia yet, but I plan to go. There are some in Mexico and in Peru as well. By the way, there are some in the USA too. Mount Shasta is a well-known channeling portal. I haven't been there yet either, but I plan to visit.
We've basically created a guide to all the power spots on the planet. Thank you so much for such a detailed answer.
I'm about to start the practice, and I want to do a cleansing practice for you. This will be a cleansing from magical influences, from energetic ones, and from blocks. I can't definitively say that absolutely all of your personal blocks will completely go away, but for those of you who are particularly sensitive, I genuinely think you'll be able to truly feel the positive effect. And if you wholeheartedly agree, if you are truly open to receiving it, you will undoubtedly gain a significant amount of benefit. And right now, I want you to gently sit comfortably, truly focusing your attention on your natural breathing, and take slow, deep inhales and equally slow, calming exhales. And as you inhale, you will fill yourself with a radiant light, and as you exhale slowly and completely, you will exhale all unnecessary nervous tension. And very, very soon, you will begin to feel your entire body gently relaxing completely. And those of you who are especially sensitive will feel that you are entering my vortex, a powerful, energetic vortex. Gaining strength, in my vortex of the energy of the sun and the earth, the spirits of nature, the elements. This is a powerful, transformative vortex that envelops everyone watching live right now, as well as everyone who will watch the recording. Everyone who is ready to cleanse themselves of external and internal negativity, I ask you to express your inner agreement with this. I am beginning the process of purification. Everyone who is currently within my personal vortex, I am actively cleansing and purifying them from all external magical influences. I completely destroy, utterly burn, and thoroughly dissolve all negative magical influences. Everyone who is currently within my energetic vortex, I completely cleanse from all negative energetic influences and from any and all psychic attacks. All that is negative and foreign, on the level of energy, it must leave the space of the participants in this practice. All energetic parasites and negatively inclined entities leave the space of the participants in this practice forever. All influences that are aimed at stealing my vital energy, I completely destroy, utterly burn, and thoroughly dissolve them. All influences aimed at clouding attention, I destroy, burn, and dissolve. I raise up the blocks, and all of these blocks, all of the negative emotions that are actively present in this very moment, I completely destroy, utterly burn, and totally dissolve them. I destroy, burn, and dissolve with my astral vortex. The brilliant white astral vortex thoroughly cleanses you completely from deep within, purifying your very essence. From top to bottom, passing through your body and subtle bodies. All negativity, all heaviness goes into the earth. At the same time, pure energy rises from the earth. This gentle and steady energy enters your feet, then gradually and gracefully rises up your legs, moving higher and higher, continuously expanding and filling every cell and fiber of the entire space of your body with a comforting and restorative, warm, deeply soothing and revitalizing healing power, bringing a profound sense of well-being. This is the healing power of the earth. which will truly help your entire body come into a deeply harmonious and balanced state, effectively dissolving all those unpleasant sensations that may have arisen during the practice. So, this process will continue for a little while longer, and very soon I will wake you up. I will bring you back to the here and now. You will wake up transformed, cleansed, full of energy and strength. You will feel wonderful. You will have inspiration and motivation for creation and creativity. I will count from 1 to 10, and with each count, you will awaken more and more. When I count to 8, you will open your eyes. When I count to 10, all unpleasant sensations will leave your physical and energetic body. So I begin 1, 2, 3, we are waking up. 4, 5, 6, we are coming back. 7, 8, slowly and gently open your eyes, gradually allowing them to fully open, truly open your eyes. 9, 10, feeling completely awake now. Take a very deep, refreshing breath in, and then slowly release it all out. And you can share your sensations in the comments.
I started to feel hot, and I feel a thin layer of sweat. It spread across the surface of my skin. Those are the sensations I have.
The energy of the earth started to flow.
I am grateful for today's broadcast. Thank you for the practice, and see you soon. See you soon.
See you soon. Thank you all for participating. See you at the marathon.